freaks of nature? Well, then come on down to Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madmen.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Derek from Derek's Horror Stuff, and in today's episode we have a very special guest. It's the one, the only, the legendary Captain Spaulding. Hey Spaulding, how's it going today? Awesome. Well, hey, so here's the deal. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the backstory behind the one and only Captain Spaulding, played by the legendary Sid Haig. Now, I found these photos through Instagram on Remembering Sid Haig, which is Sid Haig's old Instagram, since been taken over by Susie, his wife, after his passing. I believe she posted these last year on the 15th anniversary of the Devil's Rejects movie, and I copied them all down, I posted them to Facebook, and I really wanted to share them with everybody because I thought it was really cool, but I don't think that many people really saw it. And then today, I saw a guy online talking about Captain Spaulding, looking for more information behind that character, and the development of that character, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. I have this information. I gotta share this with you guys. So I compiled it all together. I got it here with the screen grabs that I took from the Instagram account. I did some voiceover work so I could read it to you, and I just want you guys to check it out. So let me know in the comments below what you think of this. It's a crazy, wild ride. Stay till the end because you want to hear the whole story. You need to know how Captain Spaulding became the man that he became in the Devil's Rejects. So buckle up, kick back, enjoy the ride. I'll see you at the end. The post reads, as some of you may remember, there was a whole website for the ramp-up of the release of the film The Devil's Rejects. At one point, background bios were posted on the website for the three rejects. Well, it just so happens that Mama here screenshot the bio for our beloved Captain Spaulding and has had it saved for the past 15 years. Tonight, the eve of the 15th anniversary of the film's nationwide release on July 22, 2005, it is my pleasure and honor to bring to you all the twisted tales of how our dear captain came to be who he was. Captain Spaulding, the world loves a clown. This may be true, but in this case, I beg to differ. Meet Captain Spaulding, the world's most notorious grease paint monster. This demented character began life on April 13, 1918 as Johnny Lee Johns. Johnny Lee was born into the small farming community of Rugsville County, although other reports state El Paso, Texas as his actual place of birth. Either way, Johnny Lee ended up in Rugsville County by the age of 5. There he spent his early years in the Rugsville Home for Orphan Boys, where he was already considered disposable youth. Sometime around 1928, young troublemaker Johnny Lee was taken in by an extreme fundamentalist and local pastor named Theodore Jensen Rhodes, his wife Alice, and their son Charlie. Charlie was the same age as Johnny, and the two were soon as close as real brothers. Johnny lived a repressive and solitary life of God on his new family's homestead and was ostracized by the community because the Rhodes were black. Young Johnny and brother Charlie dreamed of a more exciting life while helping run the family's 160-acre farm on the segregated outskirts of Rugsville. Both boys toiled under the increasingly harsh rules of the Pastor Rhodes until 1935, when a mysterious fire erupted in the family's house, killing both the pastor and his wife. Arson was suspected, but never proved. Johnny and Charlie continued to live on in the family's barn. The rest of the house, however, soon degenerated into complete shambles. Thanks to federal subsidies, Johnny and Charlie no longer needed to farm the land, and both boys abandoned it to do odd jobs here and there for the Rugsville residents. Eventually, 18-year-old Johnny had the idea to create a clown character named Mr. Ding Dong Abobo. Johnny covered his face in grease paint and dressed in silk polka-dotted pajamas, working local parties and town functions. His outrageously vulgar humor and quick wit soon turned him into somewhat of a local celebrity. Charlie, not to be outdone, began producing low-grade moonshine called Hoochie Coochie Hooch and began peddling it to local farmers. Weird Johnny Lee, as the local community knew him, had begun to develop a deeply unhealthy interest in the intimate anatomy of the female body, an interest that was fed by medical encyclopedias, books on anatomy, pulp horror novels, and pornographic magazines. He became particularly interested in the atrocities committed by the Nazis during the Second World War and the medical experiments performed on Jews in the concentration camps. Soon, Johnny changed his clown character's name to Pigfucker Jones and adopted a far more sinister look. Pigfucker Jones could soon become a rather morbid attraction and could no longer find work. By the year 1942, 26-year-old Johnny, now solely known as Pigfucker Jones, had to give up the clowning business and join forces finances with brother Charlie and his booming moonshine business, which had now expanded to include gambling and prostitution. Smooth-talking Charlie had been able to convince several local girls to turn tricks out of a local motel called the Dewdrop Inn. Now, all was going perfectly for the two businessmen until the summer of 1945, when an irate customer began beating on one of the working girls. Pigfucker stepped in and stabbed the man. In fact, Pigfucker stabbed the man 47 times, cutting out both of his eyes and sexual organs. Charlie and Pigfucker dumped the man's body in the Longwood Creek and never spoke of it again, although from that day forth, Charlie would always refer to his brother as Cutter. Around this same time, a bizarre series of murders known as the Candy Cane Killings took place, so named for the fact that a candy cane was always left behind inserted into the female victim's vagina or anus. The first victim to be found was 18-year-old Jamie Phillips. Jamie shared a large house in Rugsville with several roommates. No one suspected anything was wrong when she failed to come down for breakfast. As the day drew on, her friends grew concerned and decided to check on her. Jamie appeared to be asleep when her roommates walked in, but upon closer inspection, they were horrified when they noticed that she was lying in a pool of blood. When they pulled back the covers, the seriousness of the situation was amplified to that of pure terror. A broomstick had been broken off and rammed deep into her vagina. Jamie appeared to still be breathing, so her roommates quickly called local police. Jamie was in a comatose state when the police arrived, but she died on her way to the hospital. A candy cane was later found deep in her anus. Candy Cane's next known victim was Linda Henry, a 21-year-old waitress. On January 31st, 1946, one of Linda's roommates received a call from Linda's boss saying Linda had not shown up for work. The roommate went into Linda's basement bedroom and saw that her bed was made and her bicycle was sitting in the corner. As day turned into night and no one heard from her, her worried parents called the police and asked them to look in to their daughter's disappearance. As part of their investigation, the police performed a routine search of Linda's room. When one of the officers decided to pull back her bed covers, he was shocked to discover that the pillowcase and sheets were soaked in blood. Another officer soon found Linda's nightgown, the neckline of which was crusted with dried blood. The investigators were unable to find any evidence pointing to a suspect. Over the course of the next few months, 7 more women mysteriously vanished. Each case was remarkably similar. Each of the victims was a slender, Caucasian female and had disappeared in the evening hours. No one knew what happened to the girls until 2 bodies were found in August of 1946, just 4 miles from Lake Deadwood. It appeared to investigators that the victims, Carrie Carey and Janice Gallo, had been murdered during a crazed sexual frenzy. There was little evidence at the scene, except the candy cane placed inside each girl. The killing stopped for 4 months before resuming in Bain County, where at least 4 women mysteriously vanished. Almost a month later, one of those missing women was found just miles from where she had disappeared. Following an autopsy, it was discovered that she had been sexually assaulted and murdered with a blunt instrument. Once again, a candy cane was discovered in her vagina. Back in Rugsville, Longwood Creek were becoming well known as the brutal site for the killer, as the creek bed slowly revealed the remains of several women, one of which was later identified as 21-year-old Linda Henry. Meanwhile, during this period, Cutter and Charlie's ever-growing pimp business, which now included drugs and stolen cars, was on the rise. Then suddenly, it all came crashing down. Charlie got busted. In 1945, during a routine traffic stop for a broken taillight, Charlie was caught with 20 pounds of marijuana and sentenced to 15 years in maximum security prison. Now, how does the candy cane killer relate to our man Cutter? Well, while in prison, Charlie bragged to other inmates that his brother was actually the candy cane killer. No one took him seriously, and nothing was ever done. Many years later, it would be revealed that Cutter truly was this killer. Lost and lonely with his partner in crime locked away, Cutter returned to his clowning days. Cutter's underyielding fascination with the female body eventually led him to return to seeking out fresher samples. His next victims were 24-year-old Stacy Dayton, who disappeared from a local bar called The Dive in December 1946, and 19-year-old Jeannie Drummer, who disappeared on the 16th of January 1946. Miss Drummer's brother was also a sheriff's deputy. Learning that Cutter had been spotted in town on the day of his sister's disappearance, Frank and the sheriff went to check out the old Cutter's place. Cutter's house was already infamous amongst the local children as a haunted house. Cutter was clever, and police could find no evidence to connect him to the disappearances. Around the fall of 1947, while attending the state fair, Cutter met a young woman by the name of Eve Wilson and soon began a whirlwind relationship. 22-year-old Miss Wilson was a striking blonde beauty and also a first-class whore. Miss Eve came with some heavy baggage, namely her bastard son Rufus, who was only 6 years old but stood 5'6", and Tiny, a deformed 4-year-old standing a shocking 5'8". Tiny was horribly disfigured in a fire caused by one of Eve's ex-lovers. although over the years Eve would constantly change her story on Tiny's bizarre appearance to suit her own purposes. Cutter loved the boys as his own, and soon he and Eve were married. On September 12, 1948, Eve gave birth to their only true love child, a healthy, normal-sized girl named Vera Ellen. Not much is known about the family's activities over the next 10 years. The family made ends meet through Cutter's petty crimes and Eve's turning tricks for the local farmers. In the summer of 1958, brother Charlie was released from prison and spent a year or so hanging around Cutter's house helping Eve run her whore business. Everything was fine until one day, Cutter caught Charlie taking nude and lewd snapshots of 12-year-old Vera Ellen. Cutter was furious, stabbing Charlie in the ass and sending him packing. Enter the devil. Around the summer of 1965, a stranger came calling in the person of Otis Driftwood. Otis was a despicable character, but he and Cutter soon hit it off, and Otis was soon living with Cutter and his family, whom he called the Fireflies. In fact, Otis loved nicknames. Cutter was dubbed Captain Spaulding after the lead character in a movie called Animal Crackers. Vera Ellen was soon known simply as Baby. Eve was Big Mama, and Tiny was often called Stumpfucker, of which he was not fond. Rufus simply became Rufus Firefly. Spaulding and Driftwood went on many a violent crime spree together, stealing everything and anything, even occasionally attempting a bank robbery. Spaulding and Driftwood bragged of numerous crimes during this dark period. Starting in 1971, while Otis and Baby were off on their infamous satanic run, Captain Spaulding remained behind to work on his most ambitious project ever, the construction of a museum dedicated to all things evil. He called this roadside atrocity Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madmen. Spaulding's dream project opened its doors on October 31st, 1972, and was soon picked up and protested by local religious groups led by Pastor Matthew Duke. The outcry was mainly over its featured attraction called the Murder Ride, and Spaulding's Children Get in Half-Price promotions. Pastor Duke soon mysteriously disappeared and the controversy subsided. Years later, the Pastor Duke's decapitated corpse would be found in the Firefly's basement, serving as a doorstop. Spaulding's museum business thrived over the next couple years due to the interest in a local legend known as Dr. Satan. Now, no evidence of anyone going by the name of Dr. Satan has ever been discovered. In fact, it is now thought to be a complete creation of none other than Captain Spaulding himself. Sometime during 1974, Spaulding and Mama called it quits, and the captain moved out on his own, although his influence on the Firefly family was never far away. In fact, it is during this depressed loner period that Spaulding did his worst, beginning when he attempted to sodomize a young girl named Lori Bird. Spaulding had lured her into the back of a museum, attacking the girl after she refused to perform oral sex. The girl went to the police, and Spaulding was convicted of sexual molestation and given a sentence of 7 years in prison. He served only 8 months, but it was long enough to send his life into a tailspin. Upon his release, Spaulding found he couldn't keep a rein on his increasingly violent temper. On his own again, Spaulding turned his attention on acquiring the company of young girls and killing them. In the summer of 1975, Spaulding's warped fantasies of sexual abuse and murder had taken over, and he began constantly cruising for young girls, luring them with the pretext of employment at his fictitious modeling company. He managed to convince 18-year-old Susan Miller after picking her up in a known area frequented by runaways. Taking the girl home, he tortured Miller, repeatedly knocking her unconscious with chloroform. It is thought that Miller was kept in Spaulding's garage for over 6 months as his personal sex slave. Miller was forced to perform all manners of sick and twisted sexual acts for the demented clown. By 1976, Spaulding's constant selling of the Dr. Satan myth had reached epic proportions, and he was now attracting out-of-state tourists to his museum to view his newly installed Dr. Satan attraction. This would provide a new steady stream of victims. The worst was yet to come. Alright guys, so that wraps it up. That is the story behind the infamous Captain Spaulding. Now, I don't know what you guys think about this. I think it's a pretty crazy story. There's a lot of interesting things with candy canes and such. But let me know in the comments below what you think of this and if you've heard this story before, because I think it's really interesting. Once again, I want to give a special shout out to my guest, Captain Spaulding. Thanks for being on the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.